Are you a creator that gets completely confused and overwhelmed with email list growth? How do you use your email list to get more downloads, get more subscribers, and make a bigger impact with your podcast? This is what we're talking about today on As It Relates to Podcasting with my guest, Megan Shields. But before we go any further with today's conversation, I want to share with you that today's episode and this entire series is brought to you by my membership called Podcast Success Vault. It's brought to you by my agency called Volt Productions. We've just gone through a massive rebrand, which I'm really excited about. More details about that can be found on the website. But this monthly membership is your ultimate lifeline for starting, growing, and monetizing your show. I've heard from all kinds of creators in the membership and people who are just in the industry that this membership is a solution that fills a gap that no one has touched in the market, which makes me super excited. My goal with this membership is to help you simplify your podcast journey and to fill in those gaps so that you can take the overwhelm and the struggle and the confusion around tech out of your life and say hello to all of the confidence you're going to develop by having access to resources that are actually going to help you. By joining Podcast Success Vault, you are going to unlock a comprehensive list of resources, plug and play templates like show notes, media kits, brand pitch templates, guest email pitch templates, analytics trackers, and also have access to expert guidance from me and a community of creators just like you who are shifting and changing the podcast space every single episode. My goal with this membership is for you to be able to shine your light and bring your voice to the mic every single time you sit down to record and every single time you have a podcast episode that goes live into the air. We have monthly and annual plans available. And the best part is there's no commitment. So you can try it out. And if you decide you don't like it, you can leave. I never make any commitments with any of the products that I offer because I know that they're going to be super valuable for you and you are going to find huge impact with what we're delivering within our membership. Get access to the membership for $27 a month. You can find that in the notes below. Okay, now back to our episode with Megan. Today we are covering all things email list growth, specifically leveraging paid ads to help you grow your email list and in turn grow your downloads, grow your show, and amplify your impact. Megan, like I said, is a paid ads expert and she works with podcasters specifically. So you are going to gain so much today in part 3 of our conversation. And also, this is the second part of her trifecta strategy, which is email list growth. Okay, let's get into our conversation with Megan. Megan, welcome back to As It Relates to Podcasting. Thank you for joining me for our third episode out of our 4-part series. We've covered so much already. We have talked about the fundamentals when it comes to ads for podcasters specifically. And on our last episode, in case you missed it, we talked about running ads to podcasts and bumping up those downloads specifically. But today we're talking about email list growth. And would you agree that email list growth is one of the biggest things that creators miss, especially when they have a podcast?
Yeah. Yes, absolutely. I think that a lot of people think you have to have something to sell all the time to have an email list, which sometimes a lot of creators don't, and that's not necessarily the case. So yes, and it's so powerful. So I'm excited to dive into that.
Love it. I love it. Okay, so we've already talked about the podcast side of it. Let's talk about the email list side of this. So when it comes to the email list strategy, what is the structure of this strategy when you're implementing it?
Yeah. So we have been using, again, because the whole 2 cruxes of this whole thing was cheap and not a lot of tech. So Facebook has come out with, well, they've always been around. It's their lead forms. But over the past couple of years, they've really they've really like beefed them up. So there's a lot more that you can do with these now to create a really powerful way to like opt in. So sometimes a lot of people don't want to like get into the email list building piece because they're like, oh, well, I have to build like a whole landing page and then I have to build a funnel and then I have to build like the whole the web page and get the buttons and do all that kind of stuff. And you actually don't. So like you can literally have somebody opt into your email list from Facebook on a Facebook form that you create on Facebook. And they're super effective. Yeah, they're super, super effective because everything is done on Facebook, which without diving into the whole thing about like the iOS update and privacy and data tracking, the more you keep on Facebook, that's all data that you can use. You don't have any issues tracking data because they're not going off of Facebook to a third-party site. So that is super advantageous, and you can make audiences based on people who open the form and don't submit. So you can get really creative with how you might want to retarget people and, you know, how you want to build out your strategy. But the Facebook lead form can opt as your opt-in page, and you don't have to build a whole crazy tech funnel or worry about the pixel or any of that stuff. But it can still be super powerful to get people onto your email list. So that would function as the first step would be that opt-in on Facebook. And then the second step would be obviously people getting into your email list, which we always recommend having some kind of nurture or follow-up sequence so that when people get there, you know, they know who you are, and you're not just going to email them in a month and be like, hey, they're like, at that point, they're just like, we have no idea what you're talking about. So having something that flows to welcome them in and then let them know what they can expect in being part of your community.
Okay, so I've heard of these forms, but I was just a little bit confused about them. I've never tested them myself because I don't really understand where they go. So someone opts in with this form, then what? Like, do they get redirected to a page to download like a freebie, but then simultaneously their contact is going to like ConvertKit or MailChimp, like whatever email hosting platform you're using?
Yeah. So the form itself functions as the opt-in page. So you go through, you fill out your name, an email address, or whatever other information you want to gather from your subscriber. And then once you submit that on the back end, you can give them, let's say if it's a download or something, you can give them the download right there on Facebook. You can link to, let's say maybe your opt-in is a video training. You can link to that, and then that can take them over to the video training. So it really functions as that whole front end of the opt-in.
Okay.
And as far as like retrieving the leads, there's two ways to do that. One is you can manually download them, which if you're not doing a humongous budget and maybe you're getting like a couple of leads a day, the manual aspect's not that terrible. But if you're running a higher budget where you're getting 10, 20, 30, 40 plus people opting in daily, then it would make sense to automate that process. So the second way to get your leads off of Facebook is to use something like Zapier, which then will integrate in with the ConvertKits, the MailerLites, the whatever platform you're using. Yeah. And then it automates that full process where they fill out the form on Facebook and then now they get pushed into whatever welcome sequence or anything that you have attached to this particular download.
That is so interesting to me. Okay, so what type of freebie would a podcaster create for, like, obviously you work with business owners, so maybe you're using like an actual, like, I don't know, like my own self, like I have a launch guide and you also have a freebie. You want to plug it?
Yes, my freebie is the 3 ways that you can use Facebook ads to grow your podcast without breaking the bank. So that's,
love that.
Yep. Wonderful little freebie there for you.
Love that. So for us as business owners, this type of strategy would make sense, right? Because we're giving people that freebie. But if you're a podcaster and you don't have any of those things and you don't really, like, maybe you have like a business attached to it, but like maybe you don't have a freebie for people to opt in on, like, can you create, like, have you ever created like a podcast specific freebie? Ultimately, I guess the connection I'm trying to make is like, how does this lead to more downloads for your podcast?
Yeah. So there's a couple different pieces to that. As far as like creating the freebies, I do want to say like that's not my expertise. I don't do that. Sure. So most of my clients come to me with some sort of freebie where they're already list building. But, you know, in thinking of a freebie as a podcaster, whether you're a business owner or not, you have to think about that person that's going to be coming onto your list and what's in it for them. Like, right. That's the whole thing when it comes to advertising, marketing, anything. That's all people care about when they're seeing your ad is like, how does this help me? What is this? Does this pertain to me? Like, if not, I'm on to the next thing that's going to serve me for what I'm looking for. And so it has to be something in it for them. And so when you're creating a freebie, just bear that in mind. And then the second piece is building your email list. You're now building a pool of people that you can promote your podcast to every single week. So every time you drop a new episode, it's a controlled group. So yes, you can go on Instagram and be like, new episode, download it, go to my link in bio. And that's fine. But like the algorithm is going to be like, we're going to show that to like 4 of your followers. Good luck. And so this is a controlled group of people that you have that you're building and building and building. And you can keep promoting your podcast when you're getting, new episodes that are dropping, letting them know. If you're running contests to get reviews, letting them know. Now you have a whole group of people that you can market to. And if you want to monetize your podcast from a sponsorship standpoint, if you have a big giant audience and a big giant email list, that's going to lend you much better in the eyes of a sponsor as well.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a lot of different opportunities that can come from building an email list.
Okay, I love that. So what other type of creative could you be running to ultimately build this email list? So obviously you want to send people to a free guide of some kind, but what would other good like list builders be?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot. So you can do the free guides. Video series trainings are pretty hot right now. So if you have some different, like a different training, like if you're a business owner, let's say, and you have a different, like a training series that you might want to talk about something for your client or how you can help them, whatever. Could be a 1 video or 3 videos. You can really get creative. So people build their list that way with the free downloads, challenges. I mean, launches. There's a lot of different like boot camps, summits. I mean, there's a lot of different ways that you can grow your email list. But the most sustainable ones are the ones that are going to be like an evergreen type of deal, because you're obviously not going to be doing a summit all the time.
Right.
But if you have, a video training that is really popular, then you can just turn that into an ad, and that will just continue to run and feed your email list all the time.
I love that. I love that a lot. And so I think it's just a really cool way for creators to look at the overall strategy through a different lens and like their overall business through a different lens. Because here's the thing too, if you're listening to this and you're like, but Simona, but Megan, I don't have a business. Like I'm just a creator. Like I'm just creating stuff. And like maybe, maybe you do brand deals, like maybe you do that kind of stuff. It's a really cool way to think about this in a different perspective. Ultimately, even if you have a podcast, so one thing that we've done for Happiness Happens is my other podcast. I don't have like products that I sell for Happiness Happens, but what we do is we send a weekly newsletter that goes out every single week. And it's like your happiness, like your weekly jolt of happiness in your inbox. And we'll recommend like products we like and like what's hot, like what we're liking, a gratitude exercise, or, this week's challenge, or like, you know what I mean? Like something to stop and make you think, a quote that we're loving or whatever. So what we did was we have like, it's called like Jumpstart Your Joy guide. And in downloading that, you get access to that. And there's like journaling pages in that download. So It's a podcast that is a brand, right? Because your podcast is still a brand. And in that, you have things that are related to your show. And then we have different categories, like, here's 3 episodes you can listen to for relationships. Here's 3 episodes you can listen to for this, 3 episodes you can listen to for this. So you're plugging the episodes back in this freebie that you've created. And like you're saying, so after you've created this freebie, so I'm just giving you as you're listening right now, I'm just giving you an idea for something that you could totally do to, to link back. Another cool thing that people can do is creating like a private podcast feed, 3 episodes, very quick episodes about, I'm going to go back to happiness, like 3 episodes, a 3-part series of how I became a happier, more fulfilled person. That gets you in on your list. Now you're joining my weekly newsletter. And by that, nurturing that sequence. But I think that it's important to know, like, who's listening to your show, right? Like, who are your subscribers? Like, and that's data, like we were talking about in the last few episodes, that we don't really get a lot of. So this is a really cool way to see and to learn more about who's listening to your show and what are their habits and how they can take that and amplify it to reach even more people.
Well, and get direct feedback from them too. And so, getting a chance to now you have a pool of people to engage with and ask them, like, so a lot of people pivot their podcasts, and sometimes that's from direct feedback from their audience and what their audience
Right.
wants to hear and what's the most impactful for them. And now you have that group of people that's continuing to grow, and it'll just help you refine what you're doing. And going back to the brand piece, I mean, it's from the same lens as sponsorship, is like brands want to know you have an audience and that you have an audience that's engaged. So if you're
Yep.
not a business owner, but you are maybe selling products on the back end, or you're a fashion blogger, or like something like that,
Hmm.
where you're like, here are products that we love that you affiliate for, or you're an
Right.
affiliate marketer, like big brands want to know that like you're worth bringing on to their brand because
Yep.
of the size of your audience, and that you're going to get their product in more hands and in front of more people.
Hmm.
So there's so many different ways that even as a creator, if you're not a business owner, to really leverage an email list. And I love what you said about like how you're tying it back, and you're like, here are different episodes and like different things that you're doing. And that's cool. Like creatives are creative. So there's a lot of
Right.
different creative ways that you can do that and test things and try out and see what it works, and then get feedback from your audience.
Exactly. Exactly. And I think that's such a key piece, Megan, too, because every podcaster wants to hear from their audience, right? We ask in every single episode, reach out, let us know what you loved, rate, review, subscribe, like whatever. What did you like? What did you enjoy the episode? How many times do you actually hear back from your audience? It's not a lot, right?
Right.
Because you have to think about your own listening habits too. Like, do you reach out to every single creator that you consume? No, we
Right.
don't, right? And so
But
I
also
think
where
this
we
is,
listen, like a lot of
yeah,
times, like I'm at the gym and I'm like, I'm sweating. I can't leave you a review right
yes,
now, So the email list
exactly.
allows you to get people at a more opportune time where they might be more open to engaging, because a lot of people are on the go when they listen to podcasts.
Exactly. Exactly. And the intention of every show, you're essentially meeting people where they're at in the moment that they need to hear whatever it is that you're creating. And
Yep.
so the mechanism of which they enter into your world, the easiest you can make it for people, the better. Now, in terms of amount of freebies or amount of free guides, or whatever that opt-in is, I used to work with this client, and she would create like a new freebie for almost every single solo episode that she would create. And I was like, that's too much. Like, you don't need to have that many freebies. Like, and it was just, it's kind of confusing for people when you have too many. So how
Yeah.
many different freebies would you, or forms or whatever, would you run at one time, just to get from like a testing perspective?
I mean, honestly, it only takes one. Like
Right.
I haven't run multiple where I run multiple freebies. Like some people might have ones, and then what I always ask them when I'm onboarding them is like, what's working the best?
Yeah.
What's the one that people like the most? Let's just use that. Like you don't necessarily need to do more than one if you don't want to. You don't have to overcomplicate it. Creating a freebie for that's bananas. I can't even imagine how much work that was
So much work. It was so
to
much
do that.
energy. But then it's
So
like, then you
much.
don't have any energy to promote it afterwards. And that was like kind of like the downfall. It's like, you don't get into the hands of anyone because you're spreading yourself so thin trying to create all of
Yeah.
these
And
different
then
things with
trying to
people.
create the sequences on the back end for every single one. I
Well,
mean,
that's
God,
the
what a
thing.
nightmare.
Yeah. And it's like, you have to make sure, I think is probably really important. Like, you have to make sure that you have at least 7 emails, in my opinion, 7 to 10 that go out over a 30-day period or 40-day period, specific to that, to something like, I do this for like my launch a podcast guide. You'll get emails from me, over the 30 days or whatever, and then it'll roll into my weekly email. But sometimes I'll just put them on my weekly email anyways, because there's different information in there and there's different content, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that's all really, really important. Megan, is there anything else that you would add in terms of the email marketing piece when it comes to the growth strategy? I know we talked about it a lot, but I always like to ask and just
We
see and just
did.
make
I
sure that we
know.
covered all the bases.
I know. I feel like we did. Like we talked a lot about the reasons why to have it. Something that I would add, like even though if people aren't necessarily looking for ROI, but like there's a lot of engagement in email lists still. And
Yeah.
it's like still like
It's picking up.
$42 for every dollar, whatever for your email list. So it's like,
Mhm.
it's a huge medium, and especially for podcasting can be leveraged super, super well, and just definitely something to not sleep on, because like the sooner you can start building it, the better you're going to be. Even
Oh
if you
yeah.
don't know, and this is just a general whatever piece of unsolicited advice, but like even if you don't know where things are going to go or where you want them to go, like you can still start
Mhm.
and like figure it out, and then make your decisions later, because you'll never know where that email list might come into play, but it's better to have it.
1000%. I agree with you. When I first started Happiness Happens, because I started my podcast before my business ever even existed, it was back in 2018. And I had shifted into life coaching after that, just because I was, you learn so much. And that was kind of like the beginning of the trajectory of getting into production work. And I grew an email list right from the beginning, but I never really paid it too much attention to it. Like I just had, download opt into this thing. I think there was like 50 people on my list or something. But when I started my agency, I emailed those people and I was like, hey, like, I know you opted in for this, but this is what's happening. And then I have like about, I think it was higher than that. I think it's like 100, but I still have about 50 people because you got to tag them, make sure you tag your list. But I
Yep.
still have about 50 people who were originally from the Happiness Happens stuff way back in the beginning, right? And now they're part of my bigger list, but we segment them now and send them my weekly Happiness Happens email. And how many years later is that? You know what I
Right.
mean? So you never know. And if people don't like it, they opt out. But honestly, we don't get unsubscribes on that newsletter because people are just so excited to be a part of it,
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyways, very cool. Megan, thank you so much for joining me today for this episode. I really enjoyed our conversation.
Yes. Thank you.